Welcome to Rogue MFA Craft Chats. These are miniature craft episodes sponsored by the Rogue MFA, a writing educational community co-founded by me, Brie Castellini. Today, we are talking about character interviews. To get the full article version of this podcast, plus new weekly posts and videos on the business and pleasure of writing, creative community writing sprints, and templates at theroguemfa.com or on Substack, theroguemfa.substack.com. So for me, all stories are absolutely rooted in character. Even if the spark of my idea is a situation or a trope, it can't become a novel for me until I personally fall in love with who's in that situation or who's dragged through that trope kicking and screaming. As a result, fleshing out characters is just as important to my writing process as the outline phase, which I'm absolutely on the record saying is what I consider my first draft. But most standard character design templates are either too complicated for the sake of complexity or too vague to function, and rarely get to the true core of who these people are and what makes them tick. So I've designed my own. If you want to become a paid subscriber of the Rogue MFA on Substack, you can get a downloadable, fillable character template, but I chose 7 of my favorite prompts that I think are a good starting point for thinking a little bit more complexly about the freaks that we want to put in freaky little situations. So under the category of physical descriptions, there's obviously some standards here: eye color, hair color, height, weight, things like that. But there are probably more things to consider that go further than skin deep, if you will. So the first is prominent physical features. So what I mean by that is beyond those standard, things that appear on your driver's license. Does this character, like most romance novel heroes, have a twice broken nose? Do they have freckles, a dramatic scar over one eye, a centered front tooth like Tom Cruise? By the way, did you guys know or ever notice that Tom Cruise has a center tooth? He does. I think he might have gotten it fixed at some point, but certainly at one point in his life, Tom Cruise had a center front tooth, and I imagine that has implications on his character. When people in your book describe this character to other people, what do they focus on? When they say, oh, the person over there with X, or, that woman we met the other night who, why, right? Like, these are the things that you want to include here, because the prominent physical features that people have impacts on the way that they explore the world. My prominent features as a human being are I have a pretty big Italian nose and extremely big curly hair. And these are the things that people tend to focus on. And as you might imagine, both have resonance in my backstory that have made me the person that I am, that affect the way that I dress, the way that I, dress up, things like that. And so the same is true for your characters. What is prominent physically about them that is the thing people remember about them? Next up, we're talking sense. So if you have listened to a recent episode with poet Lisa Connors, we talked about the 5 senses in a book that she recommends to help you think more complexly about those. But you do have 5 senses, so use them. A lot of times when we describe characters in books, we pretty much stick to sight. And that is, I think, a mistake, because people are more than just what they look like. So what does your character smell like naturally? What scents define them and their day-to-day lives? If they work at a cafe, they probably always smell faintly of coffee grounds and buttery pastry. If they're outdoorsy, maybe they smell like freshly cut grass and sun-warmed skin. To build upon this sensual journey, what scents does your character favor in ways that other people can pick up? Do they have a particular fruity shampoo? Do they use Chanel No. 5 that they inherited from a beloved grandmother? Do they smell like fresh herbs from their medicinal lotion? Scents can tell us a lot about a character that don't require us having to explain something. It can just enhance or hint at something that maybe you want to foreshadow for later. And it gives you a whole new dimension to play with when you're building your person, because they are a complete and total person. So you should imagine them complexly. So the next category of character interview is their background. From where did this person spring forth? What and who made them who they are today? So your character's parents, are they still together? Is one or both deceased? Was there a nasty divorce? Who is or was your character closest with and why? Or did they not know their parents at all or lost them young? And if so, who did they latch onto like a duckling for mentorship and surrogate support? Who were the important adults or adult figures in your character's life, and what were they like, and what did that relationship look like? There's a lot of fertile ground here. It all comes back to our parents, right? So who were your character's parents, and what does that say about them and the way that they see the world in the present tense? Next up, cliques. In school or as a kid, how would this character's peers describe them or categorize them when they were young? Were they a jock or a nerd, a theater kid or a gleek, a goth or a burnout? And does that external characterization suit them because it's a good shorthand for, oh yeah, that's they were kind of a jock as a teenager, or because they carefully curated that perception for their own purposes? Did they pretend to be a jock? Did they, fake it till they made it, but inside they were really a nerd? Are they Troy Bolton, who secretly wants to sing in a High School Musical rather than just be the star basketball player? Like, it's not just what's on the surface, how other people perceive them, but it's also, is the character aware of that perception, and do they lean into it? Do they resent it? Is it a shield for them? Like, it's more than just were they a jock or a nerd in high school. Is that categorization valid, and how self-aware were they at the time to that categorization, and what does that say about them? Finally, I have actually in our character template that you can get at theroguemfa.substack.com, I have an entire page of fillable prompts for firsts, because like the first time something happens or you do something tends to be very formative for you as a person. But the one that I'm pulling out here for this podcast is your first rejection or failure, your character's first rejection or failure. Don't worry, none of us have to be self-aware during this process. So, but whether this first rejection was by a crush, by disappointing their parents, failing a test, not making a sports team, or something even more angsty, what would your character consider their first time wanting something and not getting it? And how did that rejection or failure define failure for them as they grew up? Oftentimes, this can lead to what is the incorrect lesson your character learned in the past that is something they have to unlearn over the course of your story. This can be really fertile ground for that as well. Next up, in the category of community, who are the people that your character sees consistently, and are they adding something to the story, or do they simply exist? All characters, even side characters, should be narratively supporting or impeding the goals and or desires of your protagonists. So, from that perspective, who are your character's acquaintances? Who are the people orbiting your character in their day-to-day, and in what contexts? Who do they see most and wish they saw least, and vice versa? And why can they not course correct the frequency in a more preferable manner? So sometimes it's helpful for me to think about in my own life as I'm thinking of, for my fake people, who are the people that I'm seeing most regularly? Do I want to be seeing these people most regularly, or are they simply my coworkers who I am in forced proximity with over the course of my days? Who do I wish I got to see more but don't? Who are the people in my life who I see regularly but maybe don't know all that well? People who work at my favorite coffee shop, people who always happen to be at the checkout line in the grocery store when I am. Like, all of these people tell a story about the world in which your character is placed in and the kinds of interactions that they're probably having on a regular day basis, and can be a really great way to ground your story and kind of your ordinary world in the hero's journey, and to get a sense of like, if this is what's normal for the character, how are you and the story events that you're going to put them through going to shake them out of that ordinary world, of that routine? But you got to know the routine before you can break it for them. Finally, we're going to go to the category of themes. So themes are, of course, what is the story about? And why is this the best character to explore that theme? So the prompt from this section that I'm going to call out here is, I just call it spiraling. So your character probably has some kind of goal or belief system at the start of the book that motivates their decisions. Taking it to the extreme, what is the worst possible result of not achieving that goal or not fulfilling that belief? This is essentially the stakes, right? So, if your character's goal at the beginning of the book is to get married to a duke, let's say we're in historical romance right now. Their whole goal is, I got to get married to a duke. In your character's mind, let's just let their little anxiety spiral go all the way to maximum. What is the worst possible thing that could happen to this character in their mind if they do not get that goal. If you don't marry the Duke, what happens? Well, then I'll be destitute, and my family will be destitute, and we will live under a bridge, and maybe have to go to debtor's prison, and maybe have to, all of these horrible things. Like, the way that your character assumes the worst possible scenario tells you so much about what drives them, about what they believe the stakes of their decisions are, and can be really useful narrative engines for you, because if you know what they think the worst possible consequence of their actions or inactions is, maybe you want to give that to them. Maybe you want to give them a little taste of what that might look like, so that you can really test their resilience and see, what they're really made of. But until you know what their worst possible scenario is, it's hard to give them a happy ending that actually feels satisfying. You might not have all the answers to all these prompts right away, and that's totally okay. Characters evolve as you get into the freaky little situations with them, but you do need to have a good sense of their essence before you can start plotting, and then that plotting can inform their essence right back. But having a character interview template that gets to the heart of how your character was formed pre-novel and what motivates their decision-making in the present will only deepen your relationship to them, give you prompts to explore when you're blocked, and ensure they're well-rounded and containing of multitudes. So that was Rogue MFA Craft Chat. Like I mentioned, you can get an article version and expanded stuff on theroguemfa.com or theroguemfa.substack.com, depending on where you like to subscribe to things. I hope this was a useful little exercise for you to think more deeply about the people that you're inventing to, torture for our enjoyment. And until next time, I've been Brie Castellini. Thanks so much for listening.
High Desert Voices is the official podcast of the Western Colorado Writers Forum, a nonprofit organization based in Grand Junction, Colorado. The forum's mission is to foster a rich and diverse writing community on Colorado's western slope that invites participation from diverse cultures, customs, and life experiences. The forum hosts Writers' Night presentations at the Grand Junction Center for the Arts on the first Tuesday of every month, where local and national writers give presentations on their craft. Sign up for the forum's free newsletter and listen to all our podcast episodes for free at westerncoloradowriters.org.